Welcome back to another Striper Migration Report from On the Water. It's been a good week. Yesterday was the full moon, and while in my experience the fishing was not great, there has been some major fish movement since last week's update. So let's get right into our coastal rundown. Large spawned out bass continued to exit the Chesapeake Bay and make their way north toward New Jersey and New York. There have been some substantial catches from surf fishermen off Assateague Island, where fish in the upper 40-inch class are being caught on clams, sand fleas, and chunked bunker, as well as soft plastics and swimming plugs. They should continue to trickle out of the bay for another week or so, which bodes well for Maryland anglers in Chesapeake Bay, as their temporary closure for the spawning season ends this Friday, the 16th. If you're fishing in the bay this weekend, be on the lookout for schools of big bass heading for the ocean. With the assistance of some strong full moon tides, a lot of those bass have already made their way north into the waters of South Jersey and Delaware. Last week in southern New Jersey, there were some big bass blitzes in the Atlantic City area, with fish up to the low 40-inch range being caught on soft plastics, plugs, and glide baits. Those fish should be pulling up off northern New Jersey this week. And with stripers also exiting the Delaware River, there are bound to be some waves of trophy fish from both the Chesapeake and Delaware systems on the move. There's still good action from schoolie to just over slot fish in the back bays, but if you're in the hunt for a personal best, it's probably time to start poking around out front. Look for bunker schools and keep an array of options at the ready. If you've got a boat, you'll want to be prepared to live line, drop flutter spoons, and throw some deep diving metal lips as those fish press toward North Jersey. Speaking of North Jersey, the Raritan Bay has seen a bit of a shift in the bass bite over the past week. We're seeing heavy fishing pressure and water temps climbing into the low 70s depending on what the tide is doing. Plus, bass are exiting the bay on their spawning run up the Hudson, so the class of fish is just a bit smaller than in recent weeks. With those warming water temps, the early morning hours and dusk into dark have been the most productive windows for anglers live lining bunker, trolling, and throwing plugs and plastics. We had a couple guys from the On the Water office down there last week, and they reported some tough late morning fishing, while also noting a majority of the fish caught were in the schoolie to slot range. So again, a little bit smaller fish as we start to see some of those bigger bass heading up the Hudson. However, with trophy fish moving up the coast, there should be some exceptional fishing ahead in New Jersey and New York. Jumping over to Long Island, the South Shore from Jamaica Bay all the way out to Montauk has been enveloped by stripers ranging from schoolie size to the 40-inch class. The fish have been on the move, so they were a bit difficult to pattern this week, but they've been posting up outside the South Shore inlets to feed during the ebb tide. Surfcasters fishing after dark on a falling tide have reported fish up to 20 pounds on the South Fork of the island, with large profiles like darters, XL minnow plugs, metal lips, and bottle plugs bringing bass to the sand. Meanwhile, in the Peconic Bay system, there are bass hanging in the channels where bucktail jigs and soft plastics have been catching fish in the 30-plus inch class. There are bunker and herring in the Peconic as well, and with cinder worms already spawning in southern New England, fly guys should look to the shallow mudflats and backwaters for some worm hatches this week down on Long Island. Up in the central and eastern Long Island Sound, there are bass chasing scattered schools of bunker and mackerel out on the reefs. But according to Captain Dave Flanagan of North Island Fly, there hasn't been a ton of surface action yet. They've had a few fish on topwater, but hasn't really materialized to what they expected this time of year. The topwater bite could turn on any day like the flip of a switch, but so far the best action has come while jigging plastics and throwing large bunker pattern flies on heavy sink lines for Dave. The western Long Island Sound, on the other hand, is a bit more consistent, with bass up to 30 pounds feeding on squid, bunker, and herring. The near-shore activity, according to Captain Ben Burdine out of Connecticut, has been mostly schoolies blitzing on sand eels, while out in deeper water, 30-pounders are taking flutter spoons, plastics, and topwater plugs like the dock around the bunker pods. With bunker and mackerel already set up on the reefs of the central and eastern Sound, and bass moving east on the back of the full moon, expect that topwater action to trickle east this week. While we're talking about Long Island Sound, Connecticut anglers are experiencing similar activity to their island-dwelling neighbors across the pond. The fishing has significantly improved in the Western Sound, with big bass on top and lower in the water column. They've been tight to bunker schools and seem to be making pit stops at the reef sites as they press east towards Fisher's Island and the Race. Flutter spoons and XL paddle tails again are catching those larger, deep-dwelling bass in the Western and Central Sound as they move east. Closer to shore, specifically around the mouths of Connecticut's tidal rivers, herring continue to fuel most of the fishing, and while many of those bass are resident holdover fish, laced-up stripers are in the mix, and more are arriving in the Eastern Sound with each passing day. Fishing 5 to 7-inch topwaters and soft plastics like sluggos have been catching a mixed class of fish for Captain Joe DiOrio's charters, but If those bunker schools push in shallow and pull up along places like the Connecticut and Thames rivers, it'll be time to start reaching for some 7 to 9 inch topwater plugs. Just up the coast from Connecticut, striper fishing in Rhode Island has been equally good, if not better, than it is in the Sound. Stripers in the low 40-inch class showed up last week, and similar to fishing in the Sound, anglers in Narragansett Bay are picking off those recent arrivals with flutter spoons and large paddle tails, which have been especially effective under high sun. During low light hours, walk-the-dog style topwaters and surface swimmers like Danny plugs and redfins have been effective when herring schools are abundant. The bass bite out front in Rhode Island is really picking up too, with darters, swimming plugs, bottle plugs, and live eels pulling some nice fish onto the rocks. We're going to hear more on the status of the migration in Rhode Island from one of our regional guests in just a few minutes. Cruising north through Rhode Island Sound to the south coast of Massachusetts, Cape Cod, and the islands, there are scattered groups of big bass gorging on river herring, squid, and more recently, bunker. It's been a bit of a strange spring in the backwaters and estuaries where that herring bite is usually very strong, and instead we're seeing more action in open water from the beaches of Vineyard and Nantucket Sounds and Buzzards Bay. Late last week, there was a large school of thousands of bass, many of which were pushing 40 inches in Buzzards Bay, that have since moved through the canal, and we'll hear a bit more on that from another guest here shortly. Worm hatches are underway on Cape Cod, although they've been occurring irregularly over the past week. One day it's on, the next day it's off. It's totally dead. Some heavy weekend rain didn't really help anything there, but that's another bite anglers have to look forward to this week, as I'm sure those worm hatches will continue with more warm weather on the way. Good news from my friend Captain Harvey Russell of My Brother Charters. He marked a whole bunch of fish in the rips of Vineyard Sound over the weekend. However, they showed no interest in feeding, which Harvey attributed to 54-degree water temps at the time. Regardless, the bass are clearly setting up in the rips, and with all the squid around, we should see the rips light up sometime this week. Meanwhile, stripers continue to press east toward Chatham and the outer beaches on the south side of Cape Cod, and Cape Cod Bay saw its first major wave of overslot migratory fish last week after they blasted through the canal, and stripers marched north into Boston and the north shore of Massachusetts, where river herring are still the main course for those fresh arrivals. Most of the fish beyond Boston are of the schoolie to slot variety, but there are some overslot fish right behind them, and we should continue to reap the benefits of those strong full moon tides over the next few days. On the water, striper migration reports are brought to you by Grundens. The Grundens brand was born almost 100 years ago in the small fishing village of Grundsen, Sweden, when Carl A. Grunden began making waterproof oilskins to protect fishermen from the harsh conditions of the North Sea. Today, Grundens continues to bring that same level of quality and care to their extensive line of technical apparel for commercial and recreational fishermen. I've been fishing in Grundens Bedrock wading boots and Vector zip stocking foot waders, as well as the Portal Gore-Tex wading jacket. I actually had it on in the rain last night. Water beads up, rolls right off the jacket. It's great. It's kept me safe, it's kept me dry, kept me comfortable, no matter the conditions. I'm really looking forward to breaking them in as the striper season gets underway. The Gore-Tex Portal wading jacket is packed with waterproof features like neoprene sleeve cuffs, a drop hood with a high collar that shields me from harsh winds and pelting rain, and it is specifically designed to perform in cold weather and deep wading situations, so I can keep casting the stripers through the elements from early spring through late fall. There's truly no better fit for a Northeast surf caster. Check out all their wading gear and more at Grundens.com. Grundens, we are fishing. Our first guest this week is a light tackle and fly aficionado. He's the chairman of the American Saltwater Guides Association and owner of the Saltwater Edge in Middletown, Rhode Island. Here's Rhodey's own Peter Jenkins.
How you doing? It's Peter from the Saltwater Edge, and happy belated Mother's Day. Like most seasons in Rhode Island, Mother's Day is a milestone to a transition. The water temperatures are improving, the bigger fish are arriving, and that's exactly what's happening now. Our upper third of the bay has got fish to 40 inches now, and there are a number of different ways to catch them. We're going to run through boat, surf, and fly options, and I anticipate over the next couple of weeks things to continue to improve. So breaking it down, baits would be silver sides and shrimp in the back, and those wide body bunker and herring in the bay itself. So you're looking for pinch points. For the boat angler, I'd think about topwater, like a slug or a hoagie, especially in the shallower water, the 9 to 12 foot water. Closer to the channels itself, I'd use a flutter spoon, and as you let this thing settle, you're really focusing on the 6 feet from the bottom up 6 feet, and your enemy is slack. So you need to learn to match the drop with your rod tip. But very effective, and especially right now with the big bunker schools around. For the surf guy, probably a pencil or a metal lip to search with, but I'd be looking for wide-bodied baits like this Twitch from Missouri, or a swim shad, or a magic swimmer. I remove the rear treble here to improve the post-release mortality. For the fly guy, you're probably in the back doing great with shrimp and silver sides. Just a word of caution, don't miss the fun out front with the bigger baits. And you need to throw those probably on a bigger 10 or 11 weight, and maybe even a 350 line if you have the depth in front of you. Count it down to fish again in the same place you're trying to fish with a flutter spoon, the last couple of feet of the water column off the bottom. But other options might be a bulkhead, a beast fly, that kind of thing. So a lot going on. It's coming together. It was running a little slow and a little wet and a little windy, but we're starting to find our stride here, and really look forward to the next couple of weeks being one of the great times to make a memory here in Rhode Island. Take care, and thanks for listening.
On the Water Striper Migration Reports are also brought to you by Quantum. Stripers are back, and so is Quantum with their new Benchmark and Strive spinning reels. I had a chance to fish the surf with the Benchmark 6000 during the fall striper migration last year, and it is a true workhorse. Performs great in all kinds of surf, but especially in that heavy, rough surf that you get during the fall run and even during the early spring when all those storm systems are moving through. The 6,000 size Quantum Benchmark boasts 35 pounds of fish-stopping drag power, and like all Benchmark models, it is highly resistant to heavy water pressure and sand or salt intrusion, which makes it a great choice for fishing big surf. The Strive 3000 spinning combo, which includes the same water-resistant qualities, was a top performer from the kayak and boat when stripers and bluefish fed alongside schools of large bonito last fall. The fully sealed Strive spinning reel is complemented by a sensitive but durable graphite composite rod with a stainless steel guide train, so I can focus on fighting fish with confidence instead of worrying about chipped, scratched, or corroded guides. To learn more about how Quantum is setting the new standard in saltwater fishing, check out quantumfishing.com. Quantum, tested beyond limits. All right, thanks very much for the report, Peter. As he mentioned, there's some great striper fishing to be had out front and in Narragansett Bay. And with big Chesapeake breeders still pushing north, the southern New England striper season is just getting started. Our next guest this week is one of the most knowledgeable charter captains available when it comes to striped bass fishing in the Bay State. He starts his season in Buzzards Bay and follows the bass north to his home waters of Boston, Massachusetts. Here's Captain Brian Coombs of Get Tight Sport Fishing.
All right, Captain Brian Coombs here. Just coming back in from a day of fishing up in Boston. Last week I've been kind of bouncing between Buzzards Bay and Boston Harbor. I was starting to see good fish in Buzzards Bay, kind of all along from lower Buzzards Bay up to upper Buzzards Bay. Those fish are chasing river herring. Still, if you could find larger black gulls, you'll find them a lot easier to hook. They'll be on bigger bait. We're getting them on docks. We're getting them on big algag, soft plastic paddle tails. That's worked best in upper and lower Buzzards Bay on the mainland side of Buzzards. On the Cape side of Buzzards, there have been some fish around as well. They've been chasing squid. Fish between 30 and 40 inches have been kind of moving around down that area. Up here in Boston, we're just starting to see our first fish of the year come in. I've been catching fish all week, and every day seems to be getting more and more fish, a little bit more number-wise. Most of the fish we're seeing here are 30 inches to 25-inch class fish up in the Boston area, and I would expect to have waves of fish pushing in over the next week or two, especially coming into the lunar phases towards the end of the month. Upper Buzzards Bay the other day, we went out, we had a great trip, lots of fish, marked a ton of fish as well. Then the following tide, they seem to have pushed through the canal. So Buzzards is going to be, kind of moving through waves at this time of year. And day by day, we're going to see more and more fish up in the Boston area. So I'm excited, and we'll be catching plenty of fish soon enough. And I would expect to see 40-inch fish kind of pushing up in upper Buzzards Bay this particular week.
Great news from Brian. Thank you for your input, Captain. And great news for his fellow Bostonians who are just starting to see those migratory fish mix in with the holdovers as they chase down herring. There's a lot to look forward to for Massachusetts anglers, from squid in the rips to herring heifers in the rivers, as we head into the third weekend in May. That's it from our regional reporters this week. Let's check in with the crew over at Canyon Runner for the big picture report. Canyon Runner is doing a 1-month free trial for their inshore mapping system. If you want to take advantage of this exciting offer, email info@canyonrunner.com for more details. The Canyon Runner virtual captain and tracking map is coming soon to inshore anglers chasing stripers and all other inshore species for as low as $99 a year. It serves as your co-captain, providing weather, water temperature, and safety information with a built-in warning system and so much more. Gain the ability to track each and every member and pro staff boat in real time on one page, one map, one website, one helm. Know where the fleet is at all times and extend your network of buddy boats in real time. Learn more at www.canyonrunner.com. Take it away, guys.
All right. Good morning, Matt. Everyone, we're on here till almost middle of May. Hope everyone had a great Mother's Day. Getting into this, we'll touch on the weather first, which, as you can see from the map, it's just there's more and more activity. This is the activity from about the last 5 days, going into the week, Mother's Day weekend. Let's take a step back and look at the weather, as we always do. We're gonna pull out, look at the big picture, see what our week's like. Fortunately, a heads up, we got a lot of weather coming, but just taking a look at the isobars and a couple systems coming across. There's a system right here for the beginning of the week. It looks like unsettled weather towards the beginning of the week. Hopefully by the weekend, we have decent enough weather. Remember, what we're talking about is warmth, and what we've mentioned before is about the rain. Rain like this is going to cool the temperatures down. And the temperatures right now, like nothing settled in. You don't have your core sea surface temperatures going down to 55, 60 degrees out in the ocean yet. You have big fluctuations day to day. You'll see that on our map, but rain's one of the biggest ones, and it really hurts. What we really have of an overlying thing, even though we've got water temperatures warming up, I'm going to zoom out here. This is Sunday's composite map. You can see something that we haven't seen lately. Look at the warm temperature creep. Look at this, 64, 65 degrees off of the Chesapeake, Chickadee up until like 64, just a little south of Ocean City, Maryland. It's warming up. This is how it always does. It kind of creeps up the coast like this. The first real ocean stripers I've seen come from one of our pro staff, LBI Sport Fishing, had one, but only like one or two. Look, there were stripers caught out there, the kind of the ones that hibernated there, caught by the folks that have been trying to catch a giant tuna for 6 weeks now. A few were finally caught over the weekend, by the way, but there's no bass action really out in the ocean yet. But look at the temperatures, 57, 58 degrees. Now, the bass are kind of had pushed north. Most of them are up this way. This is usually where it starts to go off out in the ocean. There was one caught out here, but just one. There was a random one caught with plenty of people looking up and down the coast. Right now, there's just a ton of bait right up all in this area. If you look, there's bait all the way up from central New Jersey north to Rhode Bay, all the way out east. We're seeing bait the whole way. These are boats running. This gentleman's running right up the beach, out to Montauk, seeing bait the whole way. We have boats all the way off the point, seeing bait. There's a ton of bait everywhere. The just bass aren't out here, except for the Montauk fight, which we've talked about, which we had a couple pro staff on all week. The water temperature, even though it's 53 degrees for the most part, there's still a big fluctuation. I'll show you here. As you know by now, we can actually pull the water temperature off of some of our boats. So here on May 4th, it was 49 degrees. Here on May 10th, it was 57 degrees. That on May 11th, it was back down to 50. As you can see, it's 54 degrees. This satellite shot from May 11th is 54. So you've got these big fluctuations in water temperature. The bass just, they need to get settled in. The water temperature's got to kind of stay steady out in the ocean. You'll see days where you're fishing 57 degree water, and then you get rain, you get a cold night, and all of a sudden it's drops 5 degrees. You go back out in the inlet the next morning, you get 30 bass the day before, you get 2 or 3 the next day, until the whole thing kind of settles in and you get your core temperature down. So looking at what's going to happen this week, unfortunately, the beginning of the week is going to be rough on that. We need more of this weather, just settled in, tranquil. But look, at this point with this water temperature, it kind of has to get going out in the ocean. I would say it's a little delayed now by February 12th. I will get to some of the reports. You could see basically where these fish reports are. These are, nothing's really changed. All this is the same thing going on. I'm going to start out east. Captain Tom Federico, one of our pro staff out here, and Oh Brother reporting back, another one of our pro staff boats. They're still catching bass out here. They fought the weather. Again, I know it's back to the weather. I'm supposed to be talking reports now. They fought the weather all week. They had tough weather fishing out here, but they had the fish. They were fishing up in here. There's, good action, halfway decent, all in this general area, right off the tip, nothing unusual, drifting baits, trolling, kind of all worked, but the action was here. But again, as we move down the beach, there's just nothing up in here. We've seen a little bit around Block. We've seen a little bit around Port Judith. Nothing red hot yet. It's still, unfortunately, it's like a broken record now. The best of the best of the best, almost automatic fishing. You got to come all the way to the west. And again, back in the bays here, it's the same story. By the bridges, at night's better during the day. Smaller fish. Same thing up in all around Long Island Sound, all around the Connecticut coast. Same type of fishing. Nothing major has changed from the previous report. Interesting though. First of all, Jamaica Bay, you can see all the action here. This is really good fishing up here. And the Fatback, one of our charter boats, is out again today as we're doing this report. One of our pro staff, he doesn't even have to leave the bay anymore. Speaking of that, a couple other of our pro staff fishing out of kind of the Keyport area. The bass are literally like right in their slip. They don't even have to burn more than like 3 gallons of fuel to put a whole day in. The bass this week moved up into this area. Either you have bass coming out who just were breeding, or you have bass going, the ocean bass moving up in. But they literally had bass up in these creeks, right in these areas. All the bass were in this area. These track lines, and again, remember, only a fraction of our boats are on here because they have to turn on their InReach or Starlink to be on here. But there's a ton of other boats fishing all up and up in these areas. All around the point. The interesting thing that happened is we showed towards the end of the call last week, the fish had kind of moved out to the point we thought it was going to start out in the ocean this week. Never happened. They actually, all the bait, for whatever reason, maybe it was east wind, for whatever reason, the bait all moved back up in this area, and obviously the bass followed them. As you move down the beach, there's nothing else. There's really nothing to talk about. You have Barnegat Bay, you got the Matitigunk, you have the Toms River, you have all that same fishing. You have guys looking. You have guys out here with the tog season closing and the sea bass season opening. You've got a lot of guys out here. All these track lines you see on the map are really guys looking for bluefins. And then they bail out and then they look for stripers and they're just not seeing it. But it's going to happen. It's really got to happen this week. As we take this back out and we go back to the water temperature chart, this week's got to be the week where it turns on. But if we're doing this call next week, and we're talking May 20th almost, and there's still no big ocean bite, that's going to be very unusual. Like to see this area the focus next week. Really like to see this turn on. Our 2 main pro staff boats up there are going to be fishing a lot this week, assuming they finally get the weather to go. We should have some good reports coming back from that. So Matt, I'm going to hand this back to you. Thanks for everything. Everyone enjoy. Hope all's well. Bye.
On the Water's striper migration reports are also brought to you by Garmin Marine. Whether you're setting up to hold position on a rip line or inching your way toward a boulder-strewn beach, Garmin's force crack and trolling motor is up to the task in any saltwater environment. With autopilot features like anchor lock, cruise control, and route following, which can all be controlled via wireless remote, this bow-mounted trolling motor is built to help you make the most of your inshore fishing trips, regardless of the conditions. The force crack and trolling motor is available in a range of shaft lengths from 48 to 90 inches for bay boats, center consoles, down east style hulls, and more. Learn more about the force crack and trolling motor and everything Garmin Marine has to offer at www.garmin.com. Garmin, engineered on the inside for life on the outside. Thank you to Canyon Runner for another great report. They always unpack the little details and provide some good pointers that help us to hone our focus in areas with prime water temps and general hotbeds of activity. Striper activity is widespread as we start heading towards the peak of the spring migration. We've got fresh fish north of Boston, big bass from the Chesapeake and Delaware moving north, striper spawning in the Hudson, 20 to 30 pounders pushing east around Long Island, and 40 inchers from Rhode Island up to Cape Cod. The impact of full moon tides was felt across the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast this week without a doubt. I don't want to jinx my friends up in vacation land, but with fresh migratory fish already in Boston, we just might see stripers reach southern Maine before the end of the month. Keep in mind also that On the Water Striper Cup is underway and we're heading into week 3 already. In this 20-week catch and release based striper fishing tournament, you can win prizes from Yeti, Bubba, Penn, Costa, or Turtlebox Audio each week just for catching fish and submitting your photos and measurements online. You can learn more about the cup and sign up at stripercup.com. For more migration updates, be sure to follow On the Water Magazine and Striper Cup on Instagram. Thanks for tuning in, Striper Coast. I'm Ron Burgundy.
Who typed a question mark on the teleprompter?